Hello, and welcome to the Linden Oaks Parent Series. My name is Christine, and I'm with the Linden Oaks Marketing Department. Today's webinar is Through the Smoke, Understanding Teens' Vulnerabilities to Vaping and Parent Resources. If you have questions at any point through the presentation, select the chat icon in the gray toolbar and ask your question. Our speaker will answer your questions during Q&A at the end of the presentation. She will also be asking questions throughout the presentation, so if you ever have a question, feel free to drop it in the chat at any given time. After presentation today, we will ask you to fill out a short evaluation on the speaker. The evaluation will open in the polling section on the right-hand side of your screen. As a reminder, the poll is only open for 5 minutes. Upon the 5 minutes, the poll will automatically close. If you're interested in attending additional webinars, you can visit our website at ehealth.org/services/behavioral-health/news-and-events/parents-education for upcoming dates and times. Our next webinar is May 17th. The topic is Decisions, how to help your teen make effective decisions to successfully manage behaviors. And our speaker is Heather Treat. So here at Linden Oaks, we treat ages 12 and up. We see anybody from adolescents all the way to seniors. We treat depression, anxiety, addiction, eating disorders, PTSD, trauma, and other mental health concerns. We have a full continuum of care. We have outpatient therapy, medication management, hospital-based programs, inpatient and outpatient programs. We have several locations. We have a 108-bed inpatient unit here in Naperville. We also have 5 outpatient locations. We have our Naperville Mill Street location. We have our Plainfield outpatient location. We also have our St. Charles location, our Mokino location, our Hinsdale location, and then we also have our Woodridge outpatient location as well. Insurances. So we accept most PPOs and HMOs and Medicaids for all kids, anyone under age 21. As you can see there on the right-hand side of the screen, these are some of the standard insurances that we do accept. However, if you do have questions about insurances, you can reach out to our assessment referral line, which is 630-305-5027. If you or someone you know is feeling anxious or depressed, you can click on that QR code there for support, treatment, therapy resources, and or information about mental health assessment. That is that same line that I told you about for insurance, which is at 630-305-5027, or you can complete an online behavioral health form through the QR code. If you're looking for more information, you can take a 5-minute aware test to gauge your mental health. We have anxiety aware, depression aware, and an addiction aware. Again, you can scan that QR code and it'll take you right to our page. So today's speaker is Tammy Tunick, and I'm going to hand it over to her and she will tell you a little bit more about her.
Okay, thanks, Christine. My name is Tammy Tunick. I am a therapist at Linden Oaks in Plainfield. I've been there for 3 years. I work with both my name is Tammy Tunick. I'm a therapist at Linden Oaks in Plainfield. I've been there for about 3 years. I work with the adult dual program now with addictions, but I have worked with the adolescents. My family and I lived in Plainfield for about 19 years. My son graduated from Plainfield North about 5 years ago. I'm really grateful to be part of this community, and I'm looking forward to sharing this information about vaping with you. So let's start with the first thing that I'd like you to interact with. You can send in the chat box. What do you think is the most common reason that U.S. middle and high school students give for trying an e-cigarette? And then Christine, if you're getting any of those results, if you could share them, and then I'll give you the answer in a couple seconds. Oh, peer pressure. Okay. The number one reason kids give is just as a friend uses them. So curiosity. Yeah, not peer pressure, but really just a friend uses them. It's important to remember that teens are really peer driven and they're really particularly sensitive to social reward. So even if you have a child that you know is really careful and safe, we can't underestimate the social reward that's perceived by these kids of making really risky choices. And it's important to these teens to do those things. And that may have the power to override their impulse control to do the right thing, maybe when you're not right there with them. We're going to talk a little bit more about that on the next two slides when we talk about the brain development of the adolescent. But first, I'd like you to watch a video from the teen's point of view.
I'm going to drop that link down into the chat box. So let me just do that real quick.
Thank you.
If you want to tell them how long that video is.
This video is just about 3 minutes and 11 seconds. I'll give you an opportunity to check it out, and then we'll have a little bit of discussion about that afterwards.
Okay, so watch for it there in your chat box. You'll see that it popped up. It should be highlighted in blue for you. So I'll set the timer, and we'll be back in 3 minutes and 11 seconds. We have about 30 seconds before we come back from the video.
Thanks, Christine.
Okay, we're good.
Thank you.
You're
Okay.
welcome.
My takeaway from that video was it really just doesn't discriminate, right? I did an informal poll with some of my friends, kids who are still in middle school and high school, and all across the board, it wasn't any, oh, for certain this group uses, or for certain this group doesn't. It was really all across the board, all demographics, grades, whether they're active in sports, whether they're not active in sports. And they make it really enticing for everybody to want to try it. So the important question is, why are teens so prone to addiction? And it really is based on their brain development. There's two reasons. One is that the brain is under construction, if you will, until you're about 25 years old. The last part of our brains to develop is this prefrontal cortex here, and it's responsible for things like emotion regulation, decision making, impulse control. It's important to know that. I don't know, as a parent, sometimes we ask our kids, why did you do that? What were you thinking? And they say, I don't know. And that seems like a ridiculous response, but sometimes they really don't know, because that judgment and that impulse control is not there. It looked like it was going to be good. It sounded fun. They just jumped in and they did it. Because the brain is under construction in that part until you're 25 years old, it does make adolescents prone to risk taking. So when we do something risky as adults, it's not as enticing and exciting. When adolescents are anticipating that something's going to be a little bit riskier, there's a little bit more dopamine, that feel-good chemical that goes off in their brain. So we would think, why would you do that? I want to do it because it is risky and it's already exciting and I'm already getting some dopamine. By the time I take that hit off the vape, now I really get the hit of dopamine. So the whole process was addictive. So this makes adolescents prone to risk taking, including experimenting, unfortunately, with tobacco, alcohol, and other drugs. Another reason that addiction, our adolescents are more vulnerable to addiction, is that at these ages, their brain is just a sponge for use. The addictive substances can physically alter the structure of the brain, and it just works faster and more intensely on teens. So the important thing here to think about is age of onset. What age did your child, or if you want to take yourself, for example, what age were you when you first started using substances? If you sampled it and that was it and you moved on, that's one thing. Now, if you are someone, or you know someone who started potentially using at the age of 15 years old and they never took a break, it alters the development of their brain. And this is even more intense for marijuana and alcohol. We can stop any further development of that frontal lobe, which you just learned is responsible for those big emotion regulations and decision making. There's a heightened risk for addiction. So when people first start, from that first 6 months to 2 years from first use, that's when the risk for addiction is its most intense. We're going to go ahead and watch a video here about the adolescent brain development and the vulnerability to addiction. And this will give us, maybe connect all the dots from what I'm saying about how the brain is more prone to addiction. This video is about 2 minutes and 4 seconds long. And Christine is putting the link in already. Thanks, Christine.
You're welcome. We have about 20 seconds left.
Thank you.
Okay, we are back.
Okay, thank you. So a takeaway from that video is each time a new memory is created or a new skill is learned, we have stronger connections in the brain or synapses as they were showing in those pictures, and they're built between our brain cells. The great thing about young people is their brain builds synapses faster than adults do, which probably makes sense to a lot of us. And nicotine can change the way these synapses are formed. So what's the difference a little bit between vaping and smoking? I think um, when vaping first started coming out, it was marketed as this opportunity for people to stop using cigarettes and do something that was less invasive and eventually not smoke at all. I definitely disagree with that. And here's why. 9 out of 10 smokers start smoking before the age of 18. And if you remember before vaping started, smoking cigarettes was almost eradicated with our adolescents. And it was wonderful, right? We were getting to the point where kids were like, that's gross, I would never try that. So I find it hard to believe that we would create a substance that would get rid of all of the rest of the smokers. What this did was it introduced nicotine to kids under the age of 18, and now we have a consumer base for the future. Um, the problem with that is all of the ways that the nicotine can disrupt the brain development, long-term functioning with attention, learning, mood control, and impulse control. There's damages to the brain, heart, and lungs. Truly, when I was preparing this, there were so many videos that were really quite frightening that I chose not to put those videos on here, of children that have actually had serious health consequences and even lung transplants as a consequence of using. So it additionally into that, young people who vape end up being 4 times more likely to move on to smoking regular cigarettes than people who don't. Really important. So if our children are starting before the age of 18, they're more likely to smoke and then even move to cigarettes in the future. I was watching Good Morning America the other day, and just on April 12th, they announced that the Juul has now settled for another $462 million. And Illinois was one of the states for that. In addition to the 438 million that they settled for in September 6th of 2022. So that puts us at a current settlement with 47 states and territories exceeding $1 billion that Juul is required to pay. And the reasons that they were required to pay that is because they were using colorful ads. They were having launch parties. They were offering free samples to kids. Social media, the flavored pods, which we'll talk about. They really downplayed the harmful side effects. You could also have unique pens and decorate them and make them unique to you. And they had some cool clothing that went along with what they were doing. So here's some more vaping facts. Now, I know we thought that originally it might be an easier, smoother transition out of cigarettes, and also it's less invasive, but we have to be mindful that e-cigarettes produce an aerosol, and the aerosol can go and affect other bystanders and our pets as well. But also, we're taking a liquid and we're running it through a heating chamber. What we end up getting is formaldehyde, acetaldehyde, particles and toxic metals, including nickel, chromium, cadmium, and lead. The chemical that gives us the flavoring in vape is called diacetyl. Diacetyl was associated with popcorn lung. When it's heated and cooked, like in the popcorn bags, it's okay. But the people in the popcorn plants were actually inhaling it while they were producing it. And that's when it's at its dangerous level. And truly, people's lungs were starting to look like popcorns with little holes in them. That is the chemical that gives our vapes the flavoring diacetyl. And certainly that is what kids are liking about it, is all the amount of different flavors that there are, and we'll talk more about that in the future. So these are some studies that just came out in 2022 for the Center for Disease and Control. They said that over 2.5 million youth reported e-cigarette use. Just in the last 30 days, 14.1% high school students, 3.3 middle school students, 27.6 of those are daily, and over 42% use more than 20 times in the last 30 days. Certainly what they're liking the most, 85%, we were talking about that diacetyl, 85% are using vapes with flavors in them. Again, I did an informal study with some kids that I know, and that was really incongruent with what I really got back from them. I heard from them, it's anywhere, and they were all in the Plainfield School District area, anywhere from 25 to 50% of kids are actively using vapes. That's much more significant than 14.1%, and it's a scary number too. I asked, how do you know this? Because of course, many of them are like, but not me, Tammy. And how do you know that? And it's because we can tell in the bathroom. There's a sweet smell, you just know. So while these studies are good, I think it's really great to go to the source and have an open line of communication. We'll talk further down the line here about ways to talk to your kids about this. I think it's important to, currently there are over 7,000 different flavors of vapes available because you can buy vape juice. And not all vape juice is created equally. Some have higher levels of nicotine than others. And so it would be like smoking maybe a Virginia Slim to a Camel cigarette without a filter. There is a wide range of nicotine in the different types of juice. A little bit more on vaping facts. I just watched a show on Wake and Vape. So this is an important thing, I think, for parents to hear as well. Teens who are vaping are more likely to use within the first 5 minutes of waking up. Wake and vape is the term. So that increased waking and vaping from just a little less than 1% and up to 2017 to over 10% in 2021. I think this gives us an opportunity later down the line to talk to our kids. When would you be likely to vape? Why would you feel it necessary to use in the morning? How does that start your day off? In 2018, the average use was 3 to 5 times a month. And in 2021, the average use was 10 to 20 days a month. But here's some good news. The actual peak use of teens using was in 2019. 80% of kids using tobacco started with e-cigarettes. And in 2019, the first cigarette on average, people were 13 years old. Since that time, the average age of first-time users continues to decline, which when we think about that age of onset, any time that we can buy is going to be better because they're going to be working with a more fully functioning, developed brain. So that is the good news. Well, yes, they're using later in life, and maybe we can catch them sooner in the morning. Okay, let's talk about vaping devices. The most common devices being used right now are disposable vapes, so they don't necessarily have to pour any liquid into them. They can use them hitters and just toss them away. Some are pre-filled and refillable pods and cartridges. And when they add, and some are tanks or mods. Those are these really big ones with, they almost look like a walkie-talkie. Those are ones where you can really pour in lots of stuff. When they asked the kids what types they were using, 13% didn't even know what types of vapes that they were using. And I think that's pretty telling as well. A place where I found some very helpful information was on the CADSET website. You can see I put a little picture of that dictionary there. You can look at, download it. And it shows you all the different types of vapes and how they can be used. It's just really helpful to see it in color. So it's simple and free resource for you there. I think it's also important to talk about, sometimes we think, well, our kids are just using these for nicotine, and I don't mean just, it's okay, but we don't really think about what else can be done. It is possible to, it's called rigging. You can actually rig your vape pen, you can pour in liquid THC and liquid wax into these, and you can be called a dab pen, or you can put it in a vaporizer. That's important to note. And just briefly, I want to touch on this. Typical marijuana from the 80s was it was only flower that was 4% potent. Marijuana now that's flower is 16 to 32% potent. But if we're using it in a dab pen, or we're using it rigging our vape pen and we're putting in the liquid THC, it's anywhere from 70 to 97% potent. So that's a completely different drug and completely different consequences. Here's some examples of common vapes that are being used now. I mean, I understand, Jules kind of taken a hit, but it didn't take long before people came up and swooped this up. These are the ones that the CADC says that they're seeing. And I also talked to a couple kids, and there's also one called Breeze that's really popular. And I'm understanding that vape is still, or Juul is still pretty popular. So if you see any of these things laying around, it's simple to pass by. Some of these look like lip gloss potentially, or maybe a little perfume spray, or it looks like it could be anything. As you can see, these are simple and easy to conceal. They're really specifically designed to disguise what they are. So a parent would walk right past a desk or a backpack laying open and see that and maybe not think anything about it. Very little smoke comes out of these products, and the smoke that does come out is a little plume and it disappears really quickly. While they're trying to regulate these being controlled on purchase online, they can be purchased online. And there's so many different types of e-liquids, it makes it exciting and a never ending. So all of this makes it risky to use, right? Because I can hide them, because the smoke disappears quickly, because I can purchase them online and I'm not supposed to. And as we learned previously, our adolescents really love that risk. It makes it more enticing to want to use. I think it's important here to talk about there's specific clothes that can be designed. I actually, before they made specific clothes, I had some crafty kids who could create like a little pouch inside their sweatshirt, and they could slide their vape right in there and just smoke no problem. How are kids getting away with smoking in class? Real simple. You can take a little thing like you're wiping your nose, you can lean down, blow the smoke into your backpack, it's gone. And no one is the wiser, except maybe the kids around you, but they're really peer influenced, right? So we asked in the beginning, why do kids first start vaping? So now I'm going to ask you to throw in some answers, take some guesses as to what is the most common reason that teens give for continuing. Once they've tried it, why do we continue to use? And if you put in your responses, Christine will share them with us. Addiction, habit.
Yep.
I can actually see it on my end, Christine.
Great.
I know, that's awesome. Connections. These are great answers, right? All of these may be reasons that teens do give for continuing to use, but the main reason that was heard was that they're feeling anxious, stressed, and depressed. The reason that's an interesting response. I'm anxious, stressed, and depressed is because the initial reason that they give for using actually becomes the severe problem with use. So while they may be using it to deal with stress or anxiety, it actually creates a cycle of dependency. And addiction can be a source of stress. We may know somebody who struggled with substances, right? Once I'm dependent on it, now I have to figure out how can I continue to keep purchasing it? How can I hide it? How can I get away with it? What if I run out of it and I'm going to need it tomorrow morning? I can't even concentrate on what I'm doing tonight because I need to make sure that I have it for when I wake up in the morning. So it creates this cycle of dependency. And after the dependency, and maybe once we get to the point where like, maybe let me stop here, Now we're going to experience symptoms of withdrawal. Symptoms of withdrawal can include irritability, restlessness, feeling anxious and depressed, which is interesting because that's why they continue to use, trouble sleeping, difficulty concentrating, and craving. Craving is a physical desire to want to use. An urge is a fleeting thought. I think it's important here to talk just briefly on a typical craving lasts about 20 minutes for a substance. So if we can get our kids to work through a craving of 20 minutes or even ourselves for whatever it may be, you can ride that wave of a craving. So that's just a little tidbit there. Of note, only 99% of e-cigarettes contain nicotine, which we know is the highly addictive substance and can be harmful to our brain development. And even the ones that say they do not have nicotine, some marked as zero, some of the vapes were found to contain nicotine as well. Some additional risks, as if that's not enough, but nicotine in adolescents may increase risk for addiction to other drugs, right? Once we ingest a drug and we stop getting the dopamine that we want, we need to move up to the next drug, which could potentially be marijuana, or could potentially be alcohol. So it increases our risk for addiction. There's been defective e-cigarettes. They can cause fires and explosions. Children and adults have been poisoned by swallowing and breathing and absorbing through their skin and eyes. When I think about the adolescents breaking apart their vape pen to kind of rig it or fill in the oil, it's simple to absorb it through skin. And also it can cause harm to our pets. I like to point that out because it's an aerosol and it can land on them or on their blankets or on the couch that we're laying next to them on. And while some people really have a hard time quitting, I know people really love their animals. So if we need motivation to quit, it could be that we want to take care of our pets better. Okay, so armed with all of this information, how do we talk with our kids about what their experience is with vaping and what are they seeing at home? So I found this fun little video. It's about 3 minutes and 23 seconds, or it's exactly 3 minutes and 23 seconds. And it's just a fun little Q&A that might break the ice or actually kind of give you some ideas about ways to talk with your children. And Christine will put that in the chat box for you now.
Yep, I've dropped it in there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, looks like we're back.
Okay, thank you. So that's a fun little icebreaker video, maybe even just to give some parents some ideas. I like the host at the end. She's like, well, maybe that's why they named it those things. And they do. Absolutely designed to be marketed and exciting and interesting to kids. So how do we talk to our kids about this? And I have some ideas here for you. First is early prevention. Ideally not waiting until it becomes a problem, right? Setting the example of being tobacco free. And if you are struggling with tobacco, setting an example of what it looks like to work through that. Not exposing our children to any secondhand tobacco, and being open to talking early and often. It's not too early to have the conversation with a sixth grader. Unfortunately, it's absolutely not. I know even, I'm thinking even fifth graders, when they're getting ready and they're going to tour their middle school and they get to check out their lockers and decorate their lockers, right? That's a time maybe afterwards you go have lunch and what are you concerned about? What are you excited about? Have you thought about if you're introduced to this? These open-ended questions. And please don't think that the conversation is one and done. I know my kid would never, we have a family history. Maybe not, maybe they would. If later down the line they start to use for anxiety and depression, maybe they would. So one conversation is not enough. Another option is to include your primary care physician in the conversation. Sometimes kids hear things differently from other adults or trusted adults than they do from their parents. So it takes a village. I agree. That may be something that you want to include. Some tips for having these conversations is choosing the right time and place, which may be easier said than done. However, probably not when you are heated or you're stressed or it's been a rough day or, there's a lot of chaos going on. Picking the right time and place where it's safe and secure and they understand, hey, I want to talk with you for about 5 minutes or so about vaping and really let them understand what the boundaries of that conversation are going to be. And then after the 5 minutes, go ahead and let them be on their way. Maybe you'll have another conversation, hopefully later and on, but just let them know how long it's going to be and start exposing them to those conversations. Appeal to their good judgment and asking open-ended questions. So instead of, are you seeing vaping in school? No. Would you ever vape? No. Are you afraid of vaping? No. They can know and yes, we do that. We want to ask open-ended questions, and something like those may sound like, what are you seeing at school? What are you seeing? I watched this vape thing and I'm really curious now. What do you see at school? And let them be the expert. Let them tell you. Then I would ask, maybe how does that impact you? Does that impact where you go to school, where you feel safe in school? How does that impact you when kids are smoking? And then a lot of times kids maybe can come from a perspective of what would they tell a friend? So what would you tell a friend that was vaping? What would your response be to them? And then they would have the ability to say, well, if I would tell that to a friend, I would tell that to myself. When we're appealing to their good judgment, we could ask them, what are your current goals? What do you see yourself? Maybe they're really wanting to be, great in band, or they want to be an athlete, or they want to, do extracurricular activities. What are your current goals? And then I would ask, like, how would vaping move you towards those goals? What if you chose to vape? Would that take you away from your goals, right? And then if they were thinking that, you could say, what are some ways that you can achieve your goals without vaping if they feel like it's not a problem? So big open-ended questions and allowing your children to be the expert, allowing them to know that that there's time and space for us to have this conversation, and it's really just a communication back and forth. I'm just really curious about your experience. So here's some parent resources, the SAMHSA website. Also, this website will give you information on other types of addiction, alcohol and marijuana as well. There's a parent tip sheet that can be found at the Surgeon General, really quick and easy. And then a lot of this information comes from the CADC, talking with your teens about e-cigarettes. Here's some good parent resources. Now, I have a teen, let's say, who does not want to talk to me about it. They're not interested in having a conversation. But me as a parent, I want them to have some education. So I'm going to work with you and I'm going to say, you know what, I'm fine. If you want to do the research on your own, I have a couple websites, pick one, go ahead and look up these. So they can go to the real cost of vaping, and it's a self-guided assessment and a self-guided resource for understanding the risks of vaping. That maybe also, if you find your child using, that may be a consequence. I want you to really understand what you're doing, and I'd like you to go ahead and review this, and then let's have a conversation about that. So one more video, and then we're done with this. This is just a 30-second video, and these are some signs that your teen may be vaping.
Just sent it.
Yeah, this one won't take long at all.
Okay, looks like it should be done.
Thank you. So if any of those signs or all of those signs look familiar to you, it is absolutely time to have a conversation. And if you have a teen that is, ready to quit or willing to quit or wants to explore quitting, or you're insisting on the quitting, then here are some resources to help your teens quit. Further down the line, that Truth Initiative, This Is Quitting program, this may or may not work for you, but they do have TikTok influencers now, and it's hashtag This Is Quitting, and it's a campaign aimed at teens to quit. Some people that are working on quitting or are quitting track their life as they quit and how they manage to get through, the morning, how they manage to get through the addiction, and how they worked on, anxiety and those types of things without using. So that can be a really helpful resource as well. That is it for my presentation. I think if you have any questions, or if there's already questions that Christine got along the way, I'll do my best to answer those for you now.
So let's start with this question. So the first question is, when do you know when it's time to speak to a professional?
When do you know it's time to speak to a professional? I can imagine that could be a family decision too. If you know that you're out of your scope of helping your child, or maybe you don't have that line of communication with your child just yet, maybe it's time to speak to a professional straight away. There are opportunities to go and have an assessment and let the child sit with the professional and work on whether it's time for them to get extended care. But if you feel as a parent, you're out of your scope, you've tried what you can try, or you think their use is so risky, it's not even worth like trying some of these things right now. Let's just get straight to a professional and tackle it, because it can be so invasive on their bodies and minds. That's when I would have the conversation. That's when I would see a professional.
How do they get away with it at school?
Yeah, I think we touched on that too a little bit. It's so easy to conceal, right? And I think some of these high schools are over 2,000 students right now, and there's bathrooms and there's time to pass in a class, and they're so easily hidden, and there's a very little plume. They get away with it at school because it's built to get away easily with it at school.
So if you have any additional questions, feel free to get those into the chat box right now. Until then, as a reminder, we do have a full continuum of care. Again, we service adolescents as young as 12 and adults 18 and older. We do have outpatient therapy, medication management, hospital-based inpatient day programs. Again, we do have services throughout the area with many locations, as you see on the screen. And then again, if you're looking for to gauge your mental health, you can always take that 5-minute aware test on our website. We have anxiety aware, depression aware, addictions aware. And then again, if you or someone you know are feeling anxious or depressed, you can always reach out to us at 630-305-5027. We do have a 24-hour hotline. You can also scan that QR code there to reach information and fill out our behavioral health form. And so at the moment, I'm going to go ahead and open up polling. As a reminder, the polling is only open for 5 minutes, so do your best to fill it out. There is a couple questions on, you know, things that you might want to see in the future as far as education. We also, you know, are looking for any comments or feedback. We'd love to be able to offer these in the future with things that you are more interested in if you are wanting to dig more deeper into certain topics with your adolescent. So please get that, you know, sent through our poll. Otherwise, if you have something later on that you think of and you would like to submit it to us, you can always send that to our Linden Oaks Marketing at ehealth.org email. Again, that's Linden Oaks Marketing at ehealth.org. If you, you know, want these videos to be sent directly to you via email or even a list of resources that Tammy had mentioned, again, feel free to reach out to that Linden Oaks Marketing at ehealth.org and we'll get those sent to you. We do thank you guys for all taking your time to log on tonight. Again, our next presentation is coming up on May 17th. The topic is Decisions, how to help your team make effective decisions to successfully manage behaviors. Thank you again, Tammy, for presenting, and have a good night, everyone.